What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Last week, I had a heck of an episode talking about Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, that being my final episode of June 2024. You know, it was a fun time recording that episode. You know, obviously, I talked about sports after that, but, you know, it was nice to go back to my roots a little bit and really tackle some issues that men deal with on a regular day-to-day basis and, just be upfront and honest and brutal about it because, whatever situation pops up in your life, you have to admit it frankly and attack it head on in order to overcome it all. So it was a very fun episode for me to record last week. I'm very happy with it, and I really hope that it helped a lot of people out there. I went back to my roots a little bit. But today we got a big slate today of new news in the NBA, and we're also going to be talking about something a little bit different that I don't really talk about much in public or with friends or with family, and that's politics. Don't get it twisted. I'm not going into policy. I'm not going into shoving my beliefs down everyone's throats, even though you're clearly going to see which way I swing when it comes to the presidential election of 2024 happening this year in November when it all comes to a close. But there's just a couple things we're going to talk about when it came to that first debate between former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden. That was a spectacle to watch, that's for sure. That's to put it lightly when it comes to excuse my French, but that shit show of a debate. At least for one side of it, we all know who the clear winner was in this debate. But like before, and like always, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32. Get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So, again, thank you for making me a part of your day. And we're going to talk, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about that complete blunder of a debate that Joe Biden and Donald Trump took part in last week. And anybody who really knows me knows that I don't really talk politics because it's too controversial, it's too this, it's too that. Personally, I don't really care what people think. You're entitled to your own opinion, and I'm entitled to mine, but I'd be lying if I said I'm not going to make fun of a certain presidential candidate a little bit today. But not necessarily make fun of them, but I'm about to point out some of the obvious things when it comes to our president right now, Joe Biden. Now, for the longest time, I've been very critical of the government in general. It's not that uncommon in episodes that I've done months and months and months ago, and even during my time at Youngstown State, and how much I criticize the government in general when I had various people on and stuff like that. But here's the whole problem with politics. The whole problem in general, I would love to know this. I really want to know who out there, now I personally do not care. I'm not going to criticize anyone who still supports him. But when you look at the presidency of Joe Biden, what good has he done? If we're being honest, anybody who was a Biden supporter before the presidential debate last week, there's no way in hell anybody could be a supporter for him after the fact. Even his own party acknowledges how much he screwed up this debate and how terrible it made him look. And honestly, my personal opinion on this is that he literally looked so unfit to be the president of the free world. He looked so unfit to be holding the office of president of the United States. Now, partially, I do think it's his health. I really almost partially felt bad for Joe Biden because obviously we don't know for certain. We don't know for sure what's going on with him. But I know for a fact that he's not right up here. That's for sure. No matter what he was talking about on that debate against Donald Trump, Biden shit the bed. If we're being honest, Biden shit the bed. I'm going to play a little clip of it for you guys And this just goes to my point in saying like how unfit he is to be president in general. You know, I'm not really going to go into too much about his policies and, you know, I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. But just take a look at this one part of the debate when Joe Biden is trying to go back after Trump.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look.
Are you kidding me? I got. Oh, the amount of brain cells I lost. Listening to that again, I can't believe I subjected myself to listening to that again. Here's the problem with politics. Everybody's usually out for themselves. There's not very many politicians, especially when you get to the higher levels. It's all, you know, there's a bunch of corruption. You know, we've known that in the United States for a long time, obviously. But I'm really curious as to how anybody honestly can look at this man, can look at this guy, and actually say confidently that he's fit to run our country. This man can't even get a single sentence out, let alone probably run the entire country. He literally, I can't think of one good thing, honestly, that Joe Biden has done during his presidency. Now, maybe that's because I just don't pay attention too much to politics, but I don't think it takes a genius to realize of what kind of president and what kind of leader President Biden is to this entire country. I literally don't know anybody who can still support this cat, especially after talking like this. Now, here's my problem. I've never truly liked either candidate when it comes to Trump or Biden. Politics in general, I hate them. I hate politics. Politicians, you know, they're liars. A bunch of politicians out there, they're liars. Now, some of them are truthful, but the Democrats, when it comes to Joe Biden and everything that he says nowadays, he just gives Trump and the Republicans more ammunition to use against him. Now, I will be voting for Trump, 100%. I will be, based off policy. If you vote based off someone who is mean on Twitter, if you honestly vote based off hate for a single person, maybe for their personality, here's my whole problem with that. You should be voting for who would do better for the country's sake. You should be voting who would do the best job in serving the American people as president of the United States. That's how voting should work in this country. That's how voting should work in general. Vote for policy, don't vote for party. Don't vote for person, vote for policy. What candidate brings the best policies to the table? What candidate is fit to run the country better? I think it's clear, cut, and dry that right now it's Donald Trump. You take both of them. Now, everybody has had issues with Donald Trump. That's no secret whatsoever. Everybody has issues with Joe Biden. There's not one single candidate that people don't have issues with. I get it. It's politics. Everybody's going to have an issue with someone. But when you look at President Trump compared to President Biden, would you rather have a loudmouth on Twitter who maybe is too outspoken about certain things, or would you rather have someone who literally might not even be healthy enough or even all the way there mentally to, or is even fit to run the country whatsoever? Biden's poll numbers are tanking. Trump's are rising exponentially. There are talks and rumors that Biden may drop out of the 2024 election race altogether, which, you know, I'm not saying that he's going to, or I'm not going to make any predictions on that. But the problem, like, the Democrats are in serious, serious trouble when it comes to who they want in the White House. It's clear as day. They don't want Trump in the office. We know this. But I don't believe there's a single Democratic candidate, maybe other than Kennedy. There's no other Democratic candidate right now that I think can go toe-to-toe with Trump and beat him in the election. I think this is Trump's election to lose. I think it's clear as day of how easily that after this debate, in all honesty, Biden, if he shouldn't have done this debate, because this just fueled more anger towards him and more doubt towards him and his leadership capability and his presidential, capabilities. It put it all in doubt. And it was live for millions of people to see. Trump absolutely owned Joe Biden on stage, on camera, in front of the entire world. He humiliated him. And like I said before, I don't really care for politics, but when you look at the grand scheme of things that are happening in our country, when it comes to voting this year, it is so clear of who the better candidate is and who's more fit to run the country of the United States. It's very cut and dry. It's very clear. And I know I'm going to take a lot of heat for that. I really am. But I don't care. I don't care about the backlash I'd get, because everybody's entitled to their own opinion in this country. And my opinion is that Donald Trump, he wasn't a bad president whatsoever when he was in the Oval Office. People didn't like him is because he was so outspoken. He was, in my opinion, too outspoken for a president. I'd rather my president just be quiet on social media and just do his thing behind closed doors and running the country. He doesn't need to blab about every little thing going on in the White House or on the campaign trail or anything like that. But in all honesty, the Democrats and Joe Biden are making it very easy for the Republicans and Donald Trump to gain more and more and more traction going into the election cycle. I think it's very clear that Donald Trump this is his election to lose. Joe Biden is in over his head. I think he's a terrible president. Always have. I was never a fan of him from the start. And I don't care who hates it. I don't care who hates that opinion, because it's so clear, especially after watching this debate, who's more fit to run the United States of America. The fact that Joe Biden actually said that the Border Patrol endorsed him, and the heads of the Border Patrol union literally came out and said, "We never endorsed you." It's simple things like that drive people crazy. It's because of that, he's just not all the way there. And now part of me felt bad during this debate, because it does seem like he's not well. It seems like he's not healthy whatsoever. And I do feel bad about that. But at the same time, the Democrats, they have no good candidates, if we're being honest. There is not one single great candidate that at this point in time I think can go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, for who all intents and purposes is leaning in the right direction, and this is his election to lose at this point. So hate me, love me, hate my opinion, love my opinion, I don't care. This is just the reality of politics right now, currently in the United States. One's clearly fit to be president, while maybe a loudmouth, still clearly fit to be president. Then you got another one, in over his head, clearly unfit to run this country. All right, that's enough of a politic rant. Again, don't take everything I say with a grain of salt. Who knows how this election is going to be a shit show. Sorry again for my cursing and everything, but that's just the reality of it right now. It's just a mess. Everything going on. This country has been through a lot over the past couple years, and take everything I said with a grain of salt, because that's just one man's opinion. Doesn't really matter, okay? So feel free to vote for whoever you want. Just vote based off policy. Don't vote based off hatred for a candidate. That's all I ask for anybody in the United States to do. Vote based off policy. Don't vote based on hate. So we're going to transition now into our NBA topics for the day. So there's been a lot of moves recently in free agency, especially recently as of yesterday. Tobias Harris is leaving the Philadelphia 76ers and just signed a new deal with the Detroit Pistons. So that'll be an interesting combination, Cade Cunningham and Tobias Harris in Detroit. Detroit has been a tire fire of an organization for a couple years, for quite a long time, actually. I can't remember the last time the Pistons were actually relevant. Maybe when Richard Hamilton and Chauncey Billups were still there and Gerald Wallace. But that was early 2000s. Even when they beat the Lakers that one year in the finals, that was still a shock. But, that team had grit. But the Pistons right now, I think they need more than Cade Cunningham and Tobias Harris to make a true impact in the NBA, at least when it comes to making the playoffs and then eventually a deep playoff run. But so Philadelphia may have lost Tobias Harris, but they got one of the biggest free agents coming to them. Paul George, done with the Clippers. The Kawhi Leonard and Paul George era in Los Angeles is officially over, and Paul George is now officially a Philadelphia 76er, signing a $212 million deal worth over 4 years. So, when I talk about Paul George, there's one thing that comes to mind, and it's underachieving, unfortunately, because Paul George is one of my favorite players to watch. He's fantastic. I easily think he's one of the top 10 players, 10 to 15 players in the NBA. The whole thing that fell through with the Clippers, in my opinion, my biggest thing for Paul George is the fact that he got away from Kawhi Leonard in Los Angeles, because Kawhi Leonard, while I think he's a great player, Kawhi Leonard is never available when it matters. He barely plays in the playoffs when they do make it because of injuries. Now, a lot of it, again, is not his fault. You can't predict injuries. Nobody can predict injuries when in any sport, especially basketball. You can't ever predict when something's going to go wrong with a player. But that's still an issue when it comes to the longevity of a team and your aspirations as an organization to win an NBA championship. The Los Angeles Clippers, back in 2019, when Kawhi Leonard and Paul George finally both agreed to sign with the Clippers, that was supposed to be the start of something great. That was going to be the big rivalry to LeBron James and Anthony Davis teaming up with the Lakers. Now, maybe during the regular season, the Clippers have had more success. But there's only one team in LA who has won a championship since LeBron and AD got to the Lakers and Paul George and Kawhi went to the Clippers. LeBron and AD back in 2020 in the bubble. It has been nothing short still. Unfortunately for Paul George, it seems like it's always on every single team he joins is choking in the playoffs. It happened when he was with Indiana early on in his career. He could never get over the hump against LeBron James when he was on the Heat. Then he goes to OKC, again, choke after choke. He was an MVP quality candidate when he was still with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then obviously Damian Lillard sent them packing with a last-second buzzer beater back in, I think that was 2018 or 2017, one of those two. But Paul George then goes to the Clippers, and it's been nothing short of failure again. So now Paul George signs a 4-year deal, $212 million to join the Philadelphia 76ers. The process. The never-ending rebuilding process of the Philadelphia 76ers. And I think that this was one of the smartest moves Paul George made. The East, while it's going to be tough, because like I mentioned before, all the best players in the East ended up getting hurt, and that's why I thought Boston had an easy path to the NBA Finals and now NBA champions, because everybody got hurt in the East. There was no competition, really. Now, with everyone coming back, I think the East is going to be more of a dogfight this year to get to the NBA Finals. Philadelphia had pieces in place already to be formidable in the playoffs. But time and time again, Philadelphia has that in common with Paul George, is choking. Choking in the playoffs, choking in the regular season, whatever it may be. Choking, 76ers and Paul George, that meshes well. But when it comes to the overall roster of the Philadelphia 76ers. You have Joel Embiid still, one of the best three big men. He's a top 10 player in the NBA, one of the best big men in the NBA. You also have Tyrese Maxey, who agreed to a 5-year deal, $204 million extension with the 76ers. And he's already been showing so much upside and promise for his career. Sky's the limit for Tyrese Maxey. I think he can definitely become another superstar in this league. And I think he's basically there, almost. And now, rather than Tobias Harris, now you bring in Paul George. I think Paul George to the 76ers makes them an instant title contender. I don't think there's any question about it. Instant title contenders in the East. And I will go out on a limb and say that at minimum, the Philadelphia 76ers with Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and Paul George will be one of the representatives in the Eastern Conference Finals next year. That's how confident I am when it comes to Paul George's game, Embiid, and Maxey. I feel like all three of them will mesh real well together, and I think the 76ers have a bright future ahead of them. So now let's transition a little bit to the opposite side of that, of Paul George leaving, and we're going to talk about the Clippers. So the Los Angeles Clippers, obviously, it's the end of the Paul George and Kawhi Leonard era. It's done. No championships in that entire 5-year span that they were together. Now, a lot of that was injuries, and a lot of it was choking in the playoffs. Go figure. So what do you have to look forward to if you're a Clippers fan? Well, you get a new stadium next year. You get a new stadium, but I don't know necessarily if this is the best team that you should be putting out. I knew that Paul George was going to leave Los Angeles just because I think he was just so fed up at playing with Kawhi Leonard, because it seemed like Paul George was always available to play in the playoffs and all the big spotlight games, and Kawhi Leonard was not. Now, again, that's injuries. But at the same time, you can't expect Paul George to do absolutely everything when you're on the Clippers. So now, Paul George out, you still have Kawhi Leonard there, who, when healthy, one of the best players in the NBA. I don't think there's any dispute about that. I think there's very little dispute about how good Kawhi Leonard is when he's actually on the court consistently. So you still have James Harden on the Clippers, who signed a 2-year, $70 million deal to stay with the Clippers. I have mixed feelings about this because James Harden, like Paul George, and like a bunch of other players in the NBA who are fantastic players, now obviously a lot of them are out of their primes, their best years are behind them, they're still good players, but their best years are behind them. James Harden has also been notorious for choking in the playoffs. I remember when James Harden was on Philly, he scored 45 points one game against Boston in the playoffs, and then proceeded to do absolutely nothing the rest of the series against Boston. And the same thing has happened since he's joined the Clippers. He's had spurts, he's had moments where he showed the Houston Rockets version of James Harden, the absolute best version of James Harden, but now I don't necessarily think that this is a great signing for the Clippers, but again, I don't know who else you would sign. And then you also signed Russell Westbrook, I believe. Yes, Russell Westbrook. The Clippers picked up his $4 million option to stay with the Clippers. However, there are still trade rumors swirling for Russell Westbrook. I believe the Clippers are just waiting for the right opportunity and the right team. If they can trade Russell Westbrook, they will. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad move. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think it's a good move. I don't necessarily think it's the best decision, because who else are you going to have on your team? I've said this a lot about Russell Westbrook, is the fact that he's a hyper-athletic point guard. Now, obviously, on the back end of his career, he's not what he used to be in Oklahoma City, but He has a high motor. He always plays hard, and he's very inconsistent. That's a big correlation between the former Oklahoma City Thunder pair in Westbrook and Harden. These guys in their primes were fantastic, but now are just so inconsistent. I don't know necessarily how this is going to work out for the Clippers, and I also believe that Derrick Jones Jr. signed a new contract with the Clippers. So you have Russell Westbrook, you have Kawhi Leonard, you have James Harden, and you have Derrick Jones Jr. Not necessarily terrible. But is this going to be a championship roster? No, not in my opinion. The West is too stacked already. The Lakers are going to be back. The Denver Nuggets are going to be back. Minnesota's on the rise. There's just a lot of competition still in the Western Conference. There's a lot to go through in the Western Conference. The Oklahoma City Thunder. The Suns will still be something. There's a lot to run through in the West. There's a lot to run through in the East. Both conferences, in my opinion, are starting to balance out when it comes to talent and quality of teams that enter the playoffs. But if I'm an LA Clippers fan, I'm shaking my head because if anybody should have stayed, if any Clippers fan wanted anybody to stay, it would have been Paul George over Kawhi Leonard. But the Clippers are stuck. They're stuck with Westbrook. I don't necessarily know what team is going to want Westbrook because he's an expensive player and very inconsistent. Now, he plays hard on both sides of the ball till the final whistle, but Russell Westbrook is just very inconsistent nowadays for him to have such a championship impact on any given team. And the same thing goes for James Harden. He has moments, like Westbrook, they have moments of greatness, but time and time again, they prove to themselves and to everybody else that they can never get over the hump. It's been notorious for James Harden to choke. It's been notorious for Russell Westbrook to choke. That's just how it's been. But if I'm the Clippers going forward, I'm doing everything I can to trade Russell Westbrook and get possibly an upcoming talent that can shoot a three. That way Kawhi Leonard could be somewhat more of a mentor. I never really thought you could build your team around a guy like Kawhi Leonard. He's very quiet, soft-spoken, not necessarily a leader in the locker room, but, we'll see how it goes. So Paul George to the Philadelphia 76ers, pairing himself with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. I think that team is primed to make a deep playoff run and possibly push for an NBA Finals appearance and an NBA championship, whereas the Clippers got significantly worse. And I would be shocked if they were to make the playoffs or get out of the first round in the Western Conference playoffs. So time will tell, and we'll see how well that this turns out. But I don't necessarily see anything great when it comes to the Clippers right now. Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, and Derrick Jones Jr., good players, but are they guys that can lead them to a championship? I don't think that that's the case anymore. If this was 5 years ago, I would have said this team would have been a surefire team to make the NBA Finals. But that's not the case anymore. All right, we got 2 more NBA stories we're going to cover. One's a little bit smaller, but one's the legit one. So it's an end of an era in Golden State. Well, first of all, Chris Paul leaves Golden State and signs with the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama and Coach Greg Popovich. That's very interesting to me. I don't know necessarily if the Spurs are primed and ready to make a deep playoff run. I do think Victor Wembanyama is the future of the NBA, at least one of the best uprising stars that's in the entire league. So I think a veteran mentor. Chris Paul has won everywhere he's ever been. Chris Paul is a winner. Now, he chokes in the playoffs, like always, and choked in the NBA Finals against the Bucks a couple years ago. But Chris Paul is still a quality player, a quality player to have. Now, he's past his prime, but having a guy like him on the team, a veteran leader, that'll only I think this is a great signing for the Spurs because I do think they just need someone in the locker room who can elevate others. And Chris Paul has proven time and time again that he can do that. So that's the first small story. Not necessarily a big-time splash where I think the Spurs are automatic title contenders. No chance. But they're definitely more formidable now with Chris Paul. Because one year we saw Chris Paul go to the Oklahoma City Thunder, a young Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and not much else. And he led them to the playoffs. So it's proven that Chris Paul's a winner. Chris Paul wins. He just wins wherever he goes. The second one we're going to talk about is Klay Thompson. It's the end of the Splash Brothers dynasty and era in Golden State. The two best shooters of all time in the NBA are no longer going to be teammates. So where is the best landing spot for Klay Thompson, who has never been the same since that knee injury he had? He's not necessarily the player he was before, but his percentages from three have dipped, but they only dipped slightly, and it's still high enough to where other players in the NBA would kill for that. I think the reason people harp on Klay Thompson so much is because nobody's just used to not seeing him be excellent. The same way with Steph Curry. So Klay Thompson, I think there's two big attractive destinations that Klay Thompson should definitely take into consideration. One is the Mavericks. The Mavericks, they have Luka, who I have my issues with, and they have Kyrie. They have a young team. I think all they need really is a shooter. And Klay Thompson, while he's older, a little bit more expensive, maybe not necessarily as great as he was before, he's still very formidable and one of the best three-point shooters in the league. I think adding Klay Thompson to the Dallas Mavericks makes them title contenders again, easily. The second best destination for Klay Thompson is in Los Angeles with the Lakers. What is the one thing that the Lakers have been missing for years on end? Shooters. They have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Like I said last week, any team in the NBA would kill to have AD and LeBron on their team. The two focal points of that team. The biggest issue with the Lakers has always been shooting. They are never quality three-point shooters. They never are. They're never at the top of the league when it comes to three-point shooting percentage. Never. I talked about it before. D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, and Austin Reeves would be backups and role players and bench players on other great teams in the NBA, like Boston, like Dallas. Maybe one person from the Lakers would start on Dallas, but I doubt it. But the biggest issue since the Lakers won the title in the bubble, has been three-point shooting. Now, surprisingly, they didn't really have too many great three-point shooters on the bubble championship team. They had Danny Green. He was a three-point specialist a lot of his career when he was with San Antonio. Kyle Kuzma was okay at shooting threes. Rajon Rondo never shot threes. That was just a group of great veterans that all meshed well together to produce a championship. Now, I get it. It was the bubble, unprecedented times, but a championship nonetheless. But even then, the Lakers didn't have a formidable three-point shooter, someone who guaranteed can make it any given time. You cross your fingers with a lot of those Laker players if they can hit a three or not. If you add Klay Thompson, you sure it up instantly. LeBron, Klay Thompson, and Anthony Davis. Now that's a trio that sounds like title contenders, and I definitely think they would be title contenders. In all honesty, the Lakers, when I say title contenders, I'm saying if seeding fell their way, it would not shock me if the Lakers ended up in the Western Conference Finals or even the NBA Finals, just because of how matchups would line up. They got a terrible luck of the draw. They had to play Denver in the first round this year. Now, they matched up well with Denver, but Denver was just a much better roster. Denver has shooters. That's why the Lakers couldn't really do anything against Denver. But adding Klay Thompson, a three-point specialist and one of the best three-point shooters of all time and one of the best three-point shooters currently in the NBA, I think you instantly propel the Lakers from like a 7 seed to maybe a 5 or 4 seed in the West. Now, obviously, it depends on what else you surround LeBron and AD with. It all matters. I get it. But if you add Klay Thompson, I would seriously consider going to LA if I was Klay Thompson, because you still have LeBron, who already said he is willing. He declined his $51.4 million option. He's still expected to sign with the Lakers, which, in all honesty, yes, he is. They just drafted his son, which we're going to talk about next. But when it comes to everything that the Lakers are doing right now, and LeBron James declining his $51.4 million option, he's willing to take a pay cut as long as the Lakers can deliver another quality veteran-like player or a superstar potential player like a Klay Thompson. I thought for the longest time Paul George would consider going to the Lakers, but I don't necessarily know how that chemistry would go well between LeBron, AD, and Paul George. I don't really think that's a Ross that meshes well, because Paul George and LeBron are kind of the same player, at least their play styles. But adding Klay Thompson adds another dynamic to the Lakers. They're a great defensive team. The Lakers are always great on defense. When you got LeBron and AD, you're going to be good on defense. They have a good post game. They have a good, inside the three-point line offense, but they just can't hit threes. So I think they should go out and sign Klay Thompson. I think they solve a lot of their three-point issues, because the second Klay Thompson gets hot, you're going to draw in a double team, and then that leaves wide open threes for other people to attempt to make, like an Austin Reeves, a Rui Hachimura, or D'Angelo Russell, who I don't think is going to be a Laker for much longer because of how inconsistent he is, but we'll see. I think the Lakers would be my prime destination spot if I was Klay Thompson. So now we're going to talk about the final story today in the NBA. Bronny James getting drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers at the 55th overall pick in this year's NBA draft. It was predicted that this would happen, and I'm not shocked it happened whatsoever, because I think this was a lot on LeBron's say. Like I said before in previous videos, that LeBron, he has a lot of say when it comes to player personnel and coaching staff decisions when it comes to his teams that he plays on. So Bronny James gets drafted by the Lakers to play with his father, LeBron, the first father-son duo in NBA history to play on the same team. Okay. Do I think that this could work? Yes. But only if Bronny is willing to play G League for a little bit. I don't think you can thrust Bronny right into the starting lineup right now as it's currently constructed and as he is as a player right now. I think he averaged like 4 points at USC. I mean, come on. That's not really a second-round pick. That's an undrafted free agent sort of player. But the upside of it is that it is LeBron's kid. If there's anybody who's going to learn the best, it's Bronny, because his father is one of the top 2 players to ever live on this planet when it comes to basketball. Can it work? Yes, it can. But I feel Bronny needs more time to work on his game, work on his craft. I'd say if I'm the Lakers, send him to the G League for the first year and a half, see how he does there. And if you start to notice more and more improvement in Bronny, then I think you start to bring him up, get him in the rotation, and then eventually maybe he'll blossom into a starter in the NBA. But as it currently stands right now, I don't think Bronny is a starter on the Lakers or necessarily a rotational player just yet. That might be a hot take, but when you look at the USC Trojans in basketball, they were awful this past year. Bronny necessarily didn't make much of a difference and have really much of an impact on their win-loss percentage and overall record. I mean, he averaged basically 4 points a game for USC. Do I think the talent's there? Absolutely. It's LeBron's son. Of course he's got the talent, but I think he's just very raw. I think he needed more time in college. If he stayed in college a little bit longer, listen, coming straight from high school or 1 year in college to the NBA, that's a tough enough leap as it is. LeBron was able to do it because nobody was close to being built like LeBron back in 2004, back in 2003, 2004, when LeBron was on the come up. Now established, I don't think Bronny is, I think the expectation and the hype around Bronny, a lot of it was placed on his shoulders by his father, LeBron. I think that's plain and simple and clear and obvious. But I think Bronny and the Lakers, I think this could work. I do think it could work. Bronny's got talent. It's there. But it's just very raw and needs more time to mature and grow. I think Bronny should play in the G League a little bit, maybe the first year, maybe the first half year. It really depends on his growth as a basketball player. He can shoot, he can drive, he can pass, he can play D, he can play all that stuff, and he can do all that stuff. Can he do it at a consistent level and at the NBA level? We do not know yet. But I'm only saying this could work is because it is LeBron's son. He is going to learn from arguably the best. And he's going to be surrounded by guys, a bunch of vets who know what they're doing, and an organization this is what worries me, though. The Lakers are already an impatient organization. I talked about it last week when I talked about NBA coaches and hiring J.J. Redick recently, that Darvin Ham was ousted after 2 years, after a Western Conference Finals appearance, and another playoff berth. After 2 years, he was ousted. Frank Vogel won a championship with the Lakers in 2020 and was ousted. The Lakers are a very, very, very impatient organization. I think they also have to have patience with Bronny. Bronny has a potential to be a good player in this league, maybe even better than we all think. But I do think it will take time. There is no scenario right now that I can see that Bronny ends up a starter right away for the Lakers. I do think he needs more time to mature his game and work on his craft. Send him to the G League, get him used to it, get his confidence level going, have him develop his game more. And I know you already know LeBron is going to be coaching him up. I think that this has the opportunity to be something great in LA if it's managed properly, which time and time again, the Lakers front office has proven they are very impatient and want results now. Part of me thinks that they're going to want LeBron and Bronny to be playing right now, real soon, before Bronny's even ready. So I don't necessarily think this is a Bronny fault. Well, again, 4 points at USC, 4 points a game at USC is not great at all. But the talent is there. But I do not trust the Lakers whatsoever. I don't trust their front office. I never trust the Buss family or Rob Pelinka or any of those executives making those decisions in LA. My final statement on this, Bronny to LA, it can work. If Bronny is giving time to mature on his game and mature in his craft and just becoming a better version of himself as an NBA player. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out.